Welcome to the third of 5 videos from the Roman Army 2021 UofW lecture on sources. In this third video, which is the first of 3 on different groups of evidence, I'm going to just say a few things about some of the evidence for the Dacian Wars. Okay, so I will minimize my face. Ooh. Okay, here we go. The Dacian War. So, I've talked about literary sources a little bit. I've talked a little bit about some of the non-literary sources. In this category, I want to just raise some of the, or highlight some of the visual evidence, artistic evidence, as it concerns the Dacian Wars. The Dacian Wars were fought by the Emperor Trajan, who reigned from 98 to 117 CE. There is one of the more famous statues of him, looking very militaristic in his general's garb, more or less, and heroic, no shoes, etc. A bit Augustan. He fought 2 wars early in the 2nd century CE, roughly 101 to 102 CE, 105 to 107 CE. They won them both. And the result of these wars, these Dacian Wars, is much of modern-day Romania became the Roman province of Dacia, separated. It had been an independent kingdom, and there'd been conflict between Rome and the Dacians for a number of decades. And then the province would be divided up later. Okay, a heavily militarized, valuable area. Now, what's kind of interesting about it is that one of the most important pieces of evidence of the Dacian Wars is this column of Trajan. I'll come back to it in another lecture, but we have this giant column you can see here, which would have originally been in color, and you can see more about this through National Geographic. And from the bottom, the base here, all the way up to the top, it provides sort of a comic book style narrative of the 2 wars, beginning, setting out for war, to halfway through, and then continuing up to the top would have been an image of Trajan up there. And it has many different segments, excuse me, from the war. There are soldiers building things, marching to places, fighting against Dacians. Trajan's there quite often doing a number of different things. Here is just one example of the bottom, and there you can see some sort of stereotypical, by most modern media perceptions, images of Roman soldiers wearing the armor, their shields, some of the helmets off because they're not in combat, they're on their way. And you can see buildings, and as I say, it winds its way around and would have originally been in color. There've been some time. Here they are crossing a bridge made of boats. And we don't really have much in the way of literary sources to describe the war. There are some, but they're fragments or they are summaries of later accounts which are lost, or earlier accounts, which are lost. We do have some archaeological material from where the war was waged, but maybe not as much as we would like. Only now are there parts of the Roman Empire about which or where more excavations are taking place that allow us to know more about how wars were fought, especially in places like Spain and the Punic Wars and Italy and France, various places. We have some inscriptions and even hints of papyri that hint at some of the aspects of the war. So this provides a narrative. Now, it's not just like a text. We have to think about things like bias, what's the intention of the author, and why did they write this? Who are they writing for? What did they include? What did they exclude? It's the same thing with this column in any work of art. It can be extremely valuable. It has its own, visual language, like a literary language. The emperor, as I said, appears many times, something like 50 to 60 times. There's been questions about how accurate they are, and some say that these soldiers here, that many in the past would say, well, those are legionary soldiers for sure, and some of the other ones we see are auxiliaries, are actually dressed more like praetorians, who are bodyguards in the capital, because this is what the artists who made this sculpture in Rome would see on a day-to-day basis. Okay, the soldiers are often involved in not necessarily fighting, though there is some fighting on here, but in marching and making and building. So it's a very particular image of the army. A lot of the soldiers who were doing the fighting on the column are not so-called legionaries, assuming that we can make this distinction, but auxiliaries. They're a bit wilder and sometimes doing things that maybe we would not think Roman soldiers should do, like holding the decapitated heads of the defeated in their mouths. And we also get some Dacians looking very barbarian, a bit like me. Okay, now this is the proportions, the quality, the workmanship is very high. Would have been quite a thing to behold, not just now, but in the color back in its day. But this was made in Rome, in the heart of the empire. The art varies from place to place. So you can also go to sort of Romania to see a document, a monument from around about the same time, slightly earlier, called the Tropaeum Traiani from 109 CE, which included originally, and this is a reconstruction, what you see here. It provided these, or included these metopes. So there were two different parts to this. There's one is this list of fallen soldiers, about 3,000 soldiers, which is unusual for Roman history because the Romans tend not to have monuments, public monuments for the dead. Those more of a private thing, and soldiers who die in battle are usually buried in mass graves and so on. We don't get the kind of memorials we find in modern northern societies like Canada. There's a few monuments, in Winnipeg about this. So it's unusual in that way. It also has the style of the art is different. There are these 54 metopes, these little rectangular images, more or less reconstructed on this monument, which seem to provide a very different kind of visual language. And we don't have all the building and the continuous narrative. It's more of a series of snapshots. Some of it is people in combat. Some of it's Romans killing Dacians. Many people have interpreted this as a warning, but unfortunately my pictures aren't great. But just give you a sense that it's not all the same, and it varies from place to place, and we got to think about context and meaning and message and so on. So there are lots of ways to think about war and the Romans at war, and art is another means, and the Dacian Wars provide some good examples of this.